And then they put the bulldozer through and they completely obliterated the whole area. Pits, earthworks. This is 10 years, just over 10 years ago, and they had it marked as a tapu place on their planning maps. This is why these people are not Maori. They're only in it for money, and this is the day and age of these people now.
This is another pa.
Yes, this was a Omanu, smaller pa. There was no use having a pa that needed hundreds of people when you only had 100 people. So this was suited for a smaller size thing. And as it extended out right through the road, and over here, I got them to save it. It was interconnected storage pits, but they brought the road as close as they could to it. And all these features and that they wanted to improve the road. They wanted to widen. If they had, they would knock everything out as much as they could. And for the road people and the workers, they got Maori from another district who were unaware of that. But I pointed out these places, and when they whacked the corn and bones come out, was exactly to the centimetre I said. It was about 8-9 months before work started after that. I put up a rahui, and at 6 o'clock in the morning workers came and they saw the rahui I put up, and they immediately retreated down to Acacia Bay. It wasn't black and white. It was put up that a knowledgeable Maori would know exactly the symbol and the meaning of it. And so so it was about 8 months before the road started. The contractors and that, they had the machines lying idle for all that time, 3 months. It's $2,000 a day or something at the time. And so that's where we had, I'm putting roads through here. You could see some of the old filled up storage pits and things that were all revealed from the road. But this is an ancient part here. If we want to,
it was a fortified part once.
Yes. These were of all time.
So is this Hiruharama here?
This is Hiruharama.
Yeah.
Well, first here, there still remains a place. You want to slow down here because you're going past a massive history, amount of history. You can see the straight in front of you there. Yes. See that bright green thing?
Yes.
It got reduced to a stump. It was when the 1930 survey took place here, dividing the C2 block, eight 2B blocks.
Yes.
Put the division through. They got them to stop extending. They were going to have a shingle heap and that, and there was just a stump remaining. It was just a starting branch grain was that karaka. Those green leaves is a karaka tree. Karakas don't grow naturally here. They were put in by the old time Maori. And that was one of 3 named karaka that remained. And that one, when there was a big tree originally, that one was marked as a, instead of a survey pegged, they marked it as a corner boundary, turning point, that karaka. Now,
is it why it's called Te Karaka Bay?
Karaka Bay is another karaka area altogether.
Okay.
But the history of this was, an elder told me that they'd bring after fighting on the other side, they'd bring bodies back and they'd hang the bodies up. They'd hang the bodies up here. That was before consumption and that, in the ovens. And so some of these have a lot of sensitivity, but there's a little spring in here, and it's named, not the fabrications that the cultural unit has done for every spring and hot tars place, but that is a genuine name after Ngātarurangi.
The spring.
The spring
So what's
here.
its name?
Sutipuno Te Rangi. I've got all the names written down because there's so many going right through here. But the trustees though, they decide to bulldoze Snow Ramika's place down, and then they put the bulldozer through and they completely obliterated the whole area. Pits, earthworks. This is 10 years, just over 10 years ago, and they had it marked as a tapu place on their planning maps. This is why these people are not Maori. They're only in it for money, and this is the day and age of these people now,
So
and the mentality of these people. And they ordered the earthworks during the development back there, the big machines to come, and just to get a one-upmanship to knock that place down, and they obliterated the whole area. And they were not interested. When I was with the chairman pointing out things, he'd say, "So what?" When I say about burials, who'd care in 400 years? That's my quote. These are the people, they're the money people that are operating in that with the families right here and now. And that's what you've got to deal with, because they control with the council, the developers and everything else. They can control the whole lot today. But here we stopped. They had a 30-acre reserve that went right through from Panui, 30 acres.
Who did?
The Maori block owners put a reserve, 30 acres.
Yes.
Present one of the trustees, who they got the machine to come down the road here, and the machine operator said, "I know what he told you, Perry, we'll leave this, we won't do that." As soon as we left, he said, "I don't care what was said, you go ahead with the machines and do this and that." That was a Maori person, and he was a logging contractor and manager for Fletcher Forest as a Maori. Every time he did it, he got a reward, a trip to Hong Kong or somewhere else by his bosses. So that is the reality, not the average people, shareholders, land interests, but the people that have always made money at the expense of Wāhi tapu.
But none of these are money. They're all Māori freehold blocks of land. They're not money. They're not earning any money. They're just
So we're going to put pine trees all through here, and I got them to put the pine trees up there, right at the back. That's where the pines and that start. That was to fight just to retain a few little things left here.
Patches of bush.
And are irritated that I was bringing up history and sites and that, wasting their time when they just wanted to get ahead with the developments. And I walked with the trustees and that. I walked right through here and pointed out my concerns.
It must be hard to get through that. It just looks almost impassable, you know. It's so thick bush.
Yes, but what I'm doing, I'm not dealing with New Zealand cultural history sensitive people who control some of these Maori land blocks. When this was before it was tar sealed, you could see evidence for the hanging stones and that exposed on the clear surface here.
So is the Rangatira Point walking track that goes through here, or is this completely?
No, it starts down here. I'm making use where we're going visually, just point out a few things.
Thanks.
Because this is a massive double ditch path. You get books written, and even John Grace's books, and they've got the thing a mile or two away. The muddled up locations and everything else. Here, bones came all over the place. There were little caves here. See little cavelets in there?
Yes.
And they were just crammed with bones.
Wow.
And bones went right up the hill and that.
Really?
And many had been subject to cremations.
Wow.
Cremations.
So all in there, that's all. Is that the urupa you're talking about?
No. They left a huge burial cave. I've got the information of even when the surveyors come and they got they got a machine to come through, and he said something about bones and that, and said, we want to get the track through, the road open, so if we want to develop. And they weren't interested in the fact that there was burials in the way. I've even got the handwritten notes, actual notes by the surveyors who was trying to object to the thing. Now they've finally reopened this to track. The council now paying 90,000 or something a year because they could
To who?
To the Maori owners here to use stop the whole government policy of land acquisition and the land swapping to swap in the middle of nowhere. It took away the whole cultural area from Maori, a land swap. Because if you took all this land away and the Crown took it over and then say, oh, you can have a similar size land 50 miles, New Zealand, never occurred. And so it stopped the Crown swap policies and deregistering them from titles and that.
Yeah.
And so this was a landmark case. But who did it? Was it committees? Was it organisations? Was it groups, tribal groups? No, it was only a couple of us. Myself and Peter Crawford. We did that.
Is he still alive?
Yes, yes. And he's and then he well, Mel Scott, the land survey ranger. So we had the workers on the scheme to put in these tracks, to put in the tracks through here. And so the trustees now are happily our land, no trespassing. Or you give us more money so public can use the track. And they're so ignorant, absolutely ignorant, these young people, they're stepping up private property. Well, what's that to go? Is that to stop themselves, anyone finding their hoochie plants in that?
Probably to stop people plundering.
We'll go down to the lake. I was first here before there was any roads or anything else. I walked from Taupo, and the road went about as far as about Kaiāwhā Bay, and there was a track coming through here, and there was in the end, I had to override Hosking and go to Commissioner of Lands, to now this here. All this area past here, the point had been completely cleared of stones, and it was a major part for the canoes, canoe landings and that. And it was there where Parikawa, the woman, brought her fleet of huahua from the western bays and brought with a fleet of boats to land there. One half-witted trustee who was part of the problem there, she came up with some ridiculous notion of where the canoes landed and that. It had no relevance to the place at all. But this here, we'll walk a little way, but you could just see here, see that rock there? That big rock just exposed because you've got the lake long enough, low enough, not as low as it wants. That rock's got its own special name, and that is where the woman and the husband hid when Panui Pa was attacked. Came from this sleeping cave, and Whakamoenga, the Tapunui Pa.
Is that Kaiāwhā as well, the son of Kurapoto?
Oh. Oh. So I monitored all the track work here. Same group they're doing work down Bully Point and other parts. So there, and it was all funded, put in. And a year ago, the trustees, no more money from DOC, stopped the public. And yet there's no mention of them having profited well. Imagine getting an advanced sum of non-existent pine trees just to compensate those saving of putting pine trees right through this block here. It's bad enough in the spring you get great clouds of green clouds come off the
yes.
pines.
Yellow,
yes. Yeah, yellowy green pollen and
yes,
that.
Yes.
And imagine what this would be. So I want this with the walkway, that trackway, I want it to be all kept to one side, but whatever the trustees now might think or say or do, I don't know what's happened. But private property, whose property? Because this isn't up in the title and that, it's exempt from rate.
This?
This.
Yeah. There's a lot of Māori freehold land that is exempt from rate, but at the moment one person settles on it, suddenly it's being changed.
It's a nice walk through.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd point out that Tarock, and this bay is a direct reference to the many burials here and the sacred places of this area that we've got. So I thought we'd have that break, but connecting Punui and that, because maps and John Grace and that have got it all wrong. Trying to put it, he confuses Rangatira Pa over the headland, the big headland, which they mistakenly call Parawira for development. It was only named after cultivation, not Parawira.
So is this Otuparai, that peninsula?
That Otuparai,
yeah.
And the Pa there was the Rangatira Pa. Rangatira Pa and an Otuparai. Of the fact is that people and trustees have got their own sections thrown in and using on well-known burial grounds, which were told at the beginning to exclude all that land, and developed all back, and they didn't. And the fact is that they are now happy to live on these burial grounds, still finding artefacts and that, picking up artefacts, and yet it's funny enough, the ones that had the most financially to gain were even gifted lands against these $800,000 leases that everyone else had to pay.
Yes, we've been told that by the person himself, how much he paid for his section, and it was the pittance. By that, it's less than a tenth of what we're talking about. So, yeah. It would seem to be almost overtly corrupt, wouldn't it? Because now even trying to cover their tracks. They're kind of, yeah. But now they're advertising that subdivision to whoever wants to go in there is paying for these little tiny 2-bedroom shitbox houses that are going to be put up all over there. Still keeping their gated community with their, tennis courts and things. I think that's a horrible precedent for gated communities kind of thing. Why? That's so unfair.
Well, one of the great communities at the end here was that the people were going there where some of them were convinced the world would end in 2000.
Yes.
But somehow while me and the wicked rest of us in the town would burn with fire and brimstone,
They'd survived by a gated padlock, a gated
Yeah,
there could be.
on their knees and exempt from it all.
Yes.
Only one chap though, he didn't buy up here, he went to Oranui, and then when the great dreadful day didn't come, he went and 4.6 and over by Rainbow Point there. Come back.
Can you push the seat back?
No,
Yeah, something's blocking it. Okay.
Precious little to work the trees around, and so that was used as a base of, you know, putting a hold on the idea of pine tree planting.
that was a terrible mistake. That I remember talking with Darky Downs, and he was a trustee for a lot of these Lake Topal Forest trusts and things, and he said to me in this deep voice, Jeffrey, one of the things I regret most as a trustee is all of the native forests that we chopped down and put in pine trees. I can see now that it was a mistake, you know, but it's too late because they've chopped down thousands of hectares of native bush and put them in these effing pine trees that after 3 harvests have completely destroyed the soil, so that it's very hard for anything to grow.
Well, again, and the fact that Jared, the archaeologists, they couldn't find par from the aerial maps and find the pumice plateaus very hard to pick up features, so they didn't mark it in the distribution map. And yet I've personally measured right to the metre a whole layout of a lot of these parts. No one else has bothered, none of the archaeologists have bothered.
So what is it, the point here then, if it's not Pornui Pa, because that's what it is, you're right, it's marked on all the maps that Pornui Pa is over here, you know, at this place. So
and there's a big, there's a good decent canoe landing down there. Now you had 2 little settlements here, 2 little settlements,
yes.
and one was Totra and one was Karaka.
What do you...
So Totara and Karaka.
Yeah, 2 little settlements. And by 1870, people were living here as well. But the telegraph line went to the where the Parawera development is. That's the telegraph line. Went and the mail route stopped there because Puihipi had charge of the mail route for so many miles. And I noted several places along here, first archaeological features, and the chap who was at the conference, Dr. Neville Ritchie, who was the top archaeologist for Department of Conservation. Did he get in touch with me as a recorder? No, he went down to Wellington, and they went down to Turangi when the doc was down there, grabbed a couple of my files, and then came out and walked around, and then sent my files without ADE, without comment, for this roading and that, for modification, for a permit to modify the sites. And then bypassing me all the time, of course, and then the Historic Places Trust said, oh, let it all go ahead, it has to be destroyed, we haven't got enough information. And the very reason that they didn't have enough information, they should have withheld the permits to get these sites modified. And this is this half-witted thing I've been faced with. And when he saw me, I had detailed maps, ground plans, everything to meter. Do they come to you first? No, they let their politically correct academic qualifications bowl them down, make big noises at the dock offices and strut around. And so there's another few sites that they're directly responsible for. Not enough information.
Speaking of that,
no, but then I pointed out to the Maori and the council and that at Tokoroa, the oldest site in the middle of North Island, was at their back doorstep. Didn't know about it.
Was
I've got photos-
Pohaturoa?
No, that was Tukaroa, by
Tukaroa.
landmark. That was by the town itself.
Yes. Okay.
Tukaroa.
Okay.
And that's where they've got it all now. They've bought the land off the farmer. 2-3 years before that, I'd already personally seen the farmer. Didn't know anything about this. He'd be farming somewhere else. And so I pointed out the things and the sites. Why do I have to go to different regions and knock on doors, introduce myself, when the historic societies and the culturally people and that are ignorant themselves? Or if they do find out, they don't do anything. And surely it's the farmer who can be modifying a sensitive place. For sure.
Te mana o did we come this way the other day, did we?
This is all one. Well, see, see that bank. This bank. This bank's on something now between the plate. There's no tracks. It's like these stone circles and stone lines. We put in the last 20 years, 30 years on machines, like here and dropping the landscaping.
I don't remember it being like this before.
So there's a point track that come along the bottom here.
No, it's not the side one. It's the side road. Go straight up the road that way.
Okay, so there's nothing along the bottom here.
No tracks.
Stop.
So when it stops being the Rangatira Point track, it starts being one point two.
But it's just not reserved. We're going happy to Laurie and onto Gals
Can you help me down?
So you can see why they would move down here. You know, once
What is this? What is this series?
see that enclosure?
Yes.
An enclosure?
Yes.
Well, I found down here in a pit, an old bent, a very old metal chisel.
Yes.
So I'm from the 1800s, the chisel. So that's what I needed to get something from on the regions. Didn't take much. We got out here, we go to the cave, we got a small food. We had like up the side of the hub. There. Small case there. The other one was a Christmas container.
was it from here?
No, that was both sides of the one on the beach.
You see why they want to sort them in there.
Especially when the lake was sometimes you can type stones and make the it's out of place. The best place for that's down Kaiāwhā Cave. That was the food basket. That was the food growing food for Kaiāwhā Cave on the east side of the cave. That's why I say the oldest part's not down there on Sydney. And later on, make one, it's the compilations and theories of that. It's just a local in there. So small groups starting off, coming back, starting to grow a few things, and over generations, suddenly build up soils for many generations to build up. So you don't let that. Well, there's no reserve boundary. There's no reserve.
It's just on a map.
No, this is just relinquished for use because the politically correct people calling themselves Department of Conservation, they sent a fisheries chap and he stopped there, he wouldn't go 1 metre on this side where we had the concerns. What's the use of sending someone from fisheries who was only interested to where the lake ended?
Yes.
And this is a sort of nutty things. Well, I tried to get another dock chap, Paul Green, and he, or was it Paul Dale, he refused to get out of the car and come in here for my concerns.
Why?
Well, it's the same with why did I have district planners? refused to the borough, refused to get out of the car when they were doing damage and that over at the Whakamoenga Point area and filling in the things. Well, we're in a strange country. People have, I had one hearing I was at, arguing with the mayor. He said, Perry said, all very friendly with the media and that. This was at one of the environmental hearings. And he said, Perry, he said, it was about Whaitaima TeWhare actually. And he said, well, Perry said, is it true that there are other pa? And I said yes. He said many. And I rattled off about 15 pa from there to here. And he said, well, he said, in front of the Wellington lawyers, they had these high profile for developers, investment developers, high profile lawyers. And he said, well, what difference then will it make if we destroy this pa? Well, they had to change the tape over and the reply I wanted. And the legal people said, I taught them a real lesson, the Wellington lawyers.
Yes, it'd be quite close to hell, aren't they really? They're not far away.
No. Well, they wanted us to say about it. Like a Kaiāwhā Cave, and one put a house there, and another one by the lower down by the cave itself.
It looks like there's a house directly behind the cave or even above the cave.
Just immediately above it. Which didn't apply with the raising of the lake and that, and they legally I didn't have a foot to stand on.
I thought because of their subdivision, the council, which is what they did in Whaitaima, they took a certain amount for a reserve contribution. I thought that's what this was.
No, there was about 8 acres, I think the rest was off.
Yes.
And that was something that they had neither the will or the desire to even give. But that was only through making case
I'm sure
for
they
the
didn't
power and the cultural sensitivity, because Doc and council that weren't using that at all. And for as far as they're concerned, we wouldn't have this path or access or anything. They had it so watertight, the lawyers and the subdividers for Butler and Gowers, that Doc, no one, fishermen or anything, had anything for right of way or reserve contribution or anything else. What had messed it up, start was the rock carvings, because the rock carvings was under a proposed reserve strip, it was, not in their actuality, for a reserve, and it was to keep the rocks in a natural state. And of course when he started carving all over them, it was altering the idea of a proposed reserve for the natural scenic features around the lake.
Well, yes, it's become a tourist attraction as a result, which was not foreseen, or it's something that's very hard to control once something gets out like that, that's so attractive to people. But I'm just So who has the right of way here? Like, are we? This is what.
No, the owners, the property, the subdividers, the gals.
Yes.
That's their own private boat thing.
But what makes it private?
Well, it's all part of their title, because their title included all land sharp to the old water edge.
But this is what I find I can't understand, because if it's now been declared a reserve, which is what it says on all the maps, that this is called Whakamoenga Point Reserve, Public Recreation Reserve, why is the public not allowed to use this?
No, this is all part, like the shed and that, it's all part of the title. There's, see, they weren't obligated to even give any sort of reserve at all. And in the books and that, this hasn't, Department of Conservation, no one could put a foot on it. The dock officials couldn't come into this land at all, just to even use this part, and the chap from the fisheries couldn't step 1 foot onto here. All that time there was no legal qualification or jurisdiction to them have anything more that wasn't in their own title.
So the general public, though, is allowed to come along here. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. We just feel like we're trespassing at the moment.
Well, as long as you don't one drop into
Well, like I'm saying,
the
if you had never walked here before, trying to find the caves, what you'd get to here and go, well,
well, basically you don't need to find the caves, because the cave is there. It's not maintained. It's not signposted, and it's not really for the public to access.
why do
It's
they want
just
to keep it so secret?
Well, no, it's a part of their privacy, I think.
Oh.
They're very private people.
Yeah, but this is very historic land with,
It does.
700 years of Māori history here, so
Yeah,
the
but
private people don't...
It's the same when in Auckland they waited till the building was 99 years old and they smashed it down so they wouldn't have any responsibility if it became 100, come under a new sort of acts. And this sort of thing happens all the time. Doesn't matter how historic or sensitive it is. It's the developers just spent at Point Share $4 million on a brick house, more than twice a small 2-bedroom house, $4 million, and it's more than double the CV. And he's immediately going to bulldoze the house down. The house was just a nuisance, irrelevant for what he's going to be put in its place. And in 1922, Corey Ramaka put his signature on, and Brightwell went and carved over the whole lot. And when people like Bruce Stebbing and others went to him, he just dismissed it and threw it back. He said, "Oh, it's just all skull and crossbones." As a carver, why couldn't he see the original tiki feature that it had? I think it was more of the modern idea. But where he said he's doing it for an aunt or something, he's going to do it with wood, besides doing it there.
What is this, Perry? Is this anything? This reminds me of the Kaimanawa wall a little bit.
No, that's all natural.
Yeah, okay.
See, that's another thing. People are happily planting and digging. And I've seen no photos, anything. Oh, we found this, we found that, we found steps, we found an altar. Where is it? Oh, it's all gone now, we're still digging. And dock people in the dock reserve going past, sign up, no digging in that. And the dock officers just give them a little wave and carry on. They're absolutely toothless.
Toothless.
Well, they do. See, one problem at Kaiāwhā Bay, and rock climbers went over Māoriland, checked down, ransacked the burial places there, took the troughs and that, wooden troughs and that away, and all Doc did, because it was in Dockland, they gave them accommodation, they gave them portaloos and everything else and accommodated them. And they should have been just abandoned and shut off.
There are so many caves around here that when they got attacked, there must have been a lot of people just take off into the little caves and hide, eh?
No, it's the type of bay which is placed the headland for that.
Honeycomb, was it?
That's right, but that was, that had proper secure places there. But no, the place in common for many was the island, Whaitaima Island.
Generations ago.
Well, Whakamoenga Point was buried, was born there.
Oh,
Born on the island.
wow, so people used to live there.
Hohepa tamamutu.
Whakamoenga Point.
Hohepa tamamutu.
He was the one. He was one of three friendly chiefs to the crown during the land wars. But he got a medal. He got, I think, a few guineas and a medal for his service. He was born on the island, and he was raised at Mukateri. He came back to Kaiāwhā Cave in an ancestral place, and then he secured a lease right to dig Kukawai, Oka. That's how Wairaki. That's how I got him over to Oranui. And then the treaty came about. So he did very good out of the land courts.
So have we come to that little carving yet, or is it still ahead of us?
But you have to go, it's still ahead. Have to sort of,
Do you think this cave was used as a sleeping cave?
yes, very much. And it had an entrance at the side there.
It did,
Yes.
and that's all been...
I recorded all before that slip came.
Okay,
At the time, he just wanted to put a house here.
right here.
And there was a lot of material there, remains of feathers and wooden things and that, all at the side.
It would never have been excavated like the other one was, though.
Hosking dug a lot up, everything he could, mainly to find bottles. And the bottles, he was a bottle collector. He was president of the Bottle Collectors Society. Everything he dug, Tongariro and that, was only to get bottles.
That's funny.
People
So he didn't
think
care about Māori history?
no, but even the archaeologists called him a fosker.
Yeah.
He wouldn't report anything or what things he dug, even wells, and then he said, I found nothing there. It was absolute lies. Absolute lies. That's why he tried to block me up, following up his things around the Laker investigation. He had open hand to dig anywhere he liked, as long as he gave reports and things he found to go to a museum. And when the museum director approached him years later with his museum, he said, I've got nothing. He said, I've got nothing. Nothing to give. And the Maori themselves were giving him a lot of their heirlooms and things for a museum. No.
And what happened there? Did they all go into museums?
No, everything got auctioned off down, I think,
that's
Christchurch
terrible.
and the massive things.
Auctioned off. So all of those things he's taken from sites over the years never went back to...
Never went back. A few artefacts from Waihora Bay went up to Auckland Museum in the 50s,
Yes.
but that was about it. Frank Reed and Taxi Pua, they both listed all the things that they passed to Trevor Hosking for a museum to pass on. And so when the director said Trevor had nothing, both in front of me and Frank Reed and Taxi listed everything they'd given Trevor. Couldn't get anything back? Not one thing.
Oh,
Not one thing.
terrible.
But he's revered. He's a byword.
Who is this person?
Trevor Hosking.
Trevor Hosking.
I'm sure another 50 years, a certain Maori family will be holding seances to ask for his advice. He's so revered, and it was a myth. He made a myth around himself.
Oh wow.
I don't know if we can get to the lake about here.
To get to that other carving. I'm just astounded they don't have a path to it.
No,
There is.
They don't have to. They don't have to, because they reluctantly just gave just the right of way for fishermen and that. It wasn't there ever to advertise the cave or access or anything else.
Wow.
It was just merely a fishery concession to keep in line with.
But things change over time, you know, and now it's much more precious that we get spaces like these set aside for the public, otherwise we're deprived from our own history and our own culture.
In line with the place names and that. And then they set up a cultural unit, cost the ratepayers $900,000. And where's all that and there's information and everything. So they built their whole existence on my
So you've already told all of these stories you're telling us to
look.
the cultural unit.
Group after group, busload after busload, Maori elders out there, Maori elders.
Yeah. So maybe this is pointing. No.
There is a sort of little track, but
This
you
is
can
what this
see it.
looks like.
But you can see the track.
I trust. Then come around.
So you go ahead then.
What do you mean there's a big puddle? Oh. Okay. Yes, yes, of course.
No, burials would be the last thing to be used.
In a big cave.
Well, sleeping, initially sleeping and that,
Yeah.
or drying nets and everything, or storing stuff. And maybe the last use before people left the place could have used it as a burial place. But people only see the end use, ignore the history, the culture, and all the layout like this cave here shows. So they've got big caves around the lake. All we've got there.
All sleeping one, all with history
All with the
of
history in
occupation.
that. There's one cave over the side of Kaiāwhā. It's got signatures going back 1890 to 1910 with different people, you know, all carved on the walls and that.
I've said to Gerard, I said, today's graffiti is tomorrow's rock art, you know, tomorrow's ancestral rock art.
Fortunately in Tokoroa there was a great figure, a little human figure. No, it's like a lizard figure. But it had been applied and reapplied and reapplied, and there were other little figures and markings, but this one they particularly want. But fortunately they're doing it kneeling down, because standing height above it, everyone had done 1890, 1900 graffiti all over.
Yes.
And had they been kneeling and doing it, they would have wiped out the early ones.
So,
Now I've got a name for the cave, and actually the name of the Maori artist that did it. But Jared didn't want to. He'd say, oh, there are no records, but I've got quite a few records of certain works of art. done in pigment.
Then I think if an artist can be attributed to a piece of art, they should be, because it's part of our anonymity. You know, when we do a public work, no one knows who's done it, no one usually even cares.
Well, it took me a long time to track that down, because I said it was at headwaters of stream, and actually where the headwaters ended, it was just over the hill. And the next thing, everything was getting destroyed. Very valuable to locals, byword to locals, common knowledge. So why were these things being destroyed? Not any permits or anything else. So I took to fire watch officers and others and saying, what's going on here? Why is that burial ground being all ploughed up and destroyed? So it was
records being kept, that's what I can tell.
Oh, look, whole records get thrown out, even with Fletcher Forest and that. Records get thrown out. A few I salvaged for Mungamingi inland of Murupara. And in the end I had identified about 15 places. Got whole local Maori, Ngāti TeWhare, because you're TeWhare, aren't you?
Yes.
Ngāti TeWhare at Murupara. We got way out. I went
whole tribe of you, Whaitaima.
I got way out there, one trip, and then they said, you know, travelling 100 miles or something, getting a group in that, and then they said, they did a bit like Jared's person to give a prayer, had to go to cancel the whole thing, because he wasn't there to give a prayer or something he probably didn't know existed before Jared contacted him. And
is this for the Waihi?
That was at the Arapuni thing, now recently, and so with this, with the groups up there, and they all gathered round. I came up with my car. This is all my own cost, my own time, my own petrol and everything. And then they said, oh, we don't feel like giving a prayer, a blessing on this, we'll leave it for another time. And I said, look, I've come all this way, and I said, it's your loss. I know 12, 15 places here. You obviously don't know one of them, any of them, and if you can't get them identified and that for before harvesting and that, well, so be it. So I get involved in different areas, and the response is virtually the same with group after group. They're not really interested in the past, or they think by standing roadside giving a prayer, and there's no follow-up management or protection of the history in the places just like this.
This is what I am staggered by, that given the age and the history, that there is still so little protection for the public's benefit.
And even if it's written in tablets and given by Moses himself, the legislation is a meaningless thing. It works out it's between the owner's responsibility and manager's responsibility, the farms and property and that. Not what's down in a file or on the map somewhere or somewhere else.
They can always...
So always knock on the doors to get to local people, managers and everyone else.
Oh, definitely.
But 160 people involved with the NZAA, who's doing it? Collectively, not one of them. Not one of them. We went down on the field trip, down to a 1960 thing, the Hosking excavated and saw ploughed up on the field, all that way, and missed out 100 places of significance going down, which even they could be told on the bus for that. But no, that's all they want to know. It's like going out with Tumu in the treaty settlement people on Chris Jolly's boat. And only knew 2 pa in the whole of Western Bays, from Kuratau up to Tihoi. And that's only 2. Were they interested in anything else in that? Not a whit of it. All reclaiming this land. And most of them didn't even know where the blocks were, never been to the blocks that they were claiming.
It's very hard to identify unless you can do it now because of the maps online, and you've got all the blocks marked.
No, they've taken my maps, my plotting, and Rakawa. We claim all this. Same map, same information, Tukuritawa. We claim all this. And 30 miles either away have not contributed to a single stream or a wahitapu or anything else. Not one thing. And yet they get paid bundles of money as researchers. And that's a joke. If I have a cluster of sites, assumedly there are others and others and others, and it never works from there.
Well, what are we doing wrong? Because we're not getting paid a cent, are we, Whaitaima?
No.
You're not getting paid a
No,
cent.
I've never been paid. 89% of the work, apart from some forestry work, has been out of my pocket. My car to go to Murupara to liaise with some Maori before sites, a dozen sites or so, and this side I was picking up some early records before they got thrown out in the now dismantled forest at Waitapu, forest headquarters. And I managed to pull out before it got thrown some of these old records, nosing in the office where things were, and who Forest Service recorders had recorded something back about 1970. That's how I picked up on that. Where's the liaison between the forest companies and the local Maori or anything else? It's so it's not just Taupo.
Oh, I'm sure
It's Tokoroa points north and south. I stirred a big stick one down the South Island years ago. Now they've got the recognition, the bones returned, and that for Wairau Bar. Jared Regan and that went all in for that bun fight they had, and each bone was beautifully carved, boxes and all taken back. Didn't get any white myself, of course.
Well, this could have saved hundreds of people. Hey. ones though, you mean?
No, these are separate outcrops as well. And what happened with the quarries was he concluded with our research that there were no quarries. They'd been recorded Archaeological Association for that area. So that's the first two sites recorded as quarries. And I started mapping them out, everything out, just blinked out the map far and wide, places that Trevor had never inclination, anything to go to. And with that, he only found one source of actual quarry. And that was something I showed him, that they'd all missed, and that was more over toward the lake. And that was quarry, the brown obsidian.
Brown obsidian.
No, and they were actually quarrying it. It wasn't good for cutting, but quite ornamental. Yeah. And so that was the only thing. And so where it says quarries and obsidian quarries, it's another misnomer.
Well, no wonder people go blundering about here. You know, this is what they were complaining about up the top, that people were blundering around down here. And no wonder when there's no clouds.
Yes, but that's not meant to have this general public access to it's just a concession put aside for
Locals.
Fishermen.
Fishermen.
Right away, fishermen extension of the access that wasn't on paper and hadn't been rectified and didn't apply legally to them in the 26 Act. So it's just a concession for fishermen access.
I suppose it's really, it's not what the law is, it's what feels right. And to me it feels right that this should be a public place. It should be a revered reserve area that every New Zealander should be able to learn and feel their history.
When I took a photo of Anne Leahy and that here, old black and white photo, and they had the first senior archaeologist from the Historic Places Trust in the photo, they said to me one time, he said, Perry, if the Historic Places Trust don't put any money anywhere, what will we preserve? I pointed out Panui. Well, that's too far away, he said, too far away from the public and out of town. So what was the use of saying this and that and that? That's their mindset.
Too far away.
Perry, is that a...
They're used to working in the city, air-conditioned offices, and just walking to local coffee bar and past a couple of heritage buildings. And so if you want idiot responses, I've got it from the best of them.
No, we want it different. We want mature, considered, thoughtful, sustainable responses.
Too far away. And yet they did that field trip to nothing, all ploughed up down at the National Park.
What do you think would help raise awareness and keep appreciation for the heritage that we have? Other than what we are doing right this moment, what else do you think would help?
My book published, if it was published with pamphlet available to public about the history of this bay, it ties everything together.
Yes.
And that spent $900,000 on ratepayers. They took that information and said it was all sacred and everything else couldn't be revealed, couldn't go outside their doors, and they would have had it for the bay. They would have had the photos, they would have had the things, they
And
would
this
have
is
had
an Archie
Ryan.
Doe
Where is your book? Can we buy your book?
No, it never got published. It got taken over by the Rahota Land Rights. This was with Eddie Aubrey, a former chairman that time.
Go for land rights.
Land rights, very militant, isn't it? Land rights.
Yeah.
Yes, and they took over the thinking and mindset and all resource consensus councils.
Are they still
No,
in
no,
existence?
they're defunct. Anytime I walk away from something, it just fizzles out. Very militant with the council meetings and everything else.
Did you hear that? We'd better stay friends with Perry.
Yes, we better.
Or else it'll fizzle out.
We might fizzle out.
We're trying to kind of set up like a collective of rock art enthusiasts or people who care about our rock art heritage, because it so ties in with a lot of ancient archaeological things that I think
one of the abuses of it was these people that contributed to proving the ancient Greeks were here in New Zealand, and apart from the idiot things, or tiki, greenstone tiki, all came from Greece, because someone was in Greece at the museum and there's a New Zealand greenstone tiki. Or that's in Greece, therefore the Greeks must, and that's how this book's made up. The idiot contributors all to it. But what got me, I showed a very faded waka thing on pumice, very faded. Because you saw that pet spiral,
yes,
Wairaki,
yes.
the eyes for that, and then Dominic and they're all looking everywhere.
It was
and
a little bit
Jared running
underwhelming.
around and that, underwhelming.
Yes.
But then they were trying to find something else. What I knew, I recorded, was there. Never mind the rest of the block that I'd looked at, and it was the same. It was the same with this thing. It was a little beautiful. Could have been like a finger thing, but it was like the South Island, a bit of a bow with figures, stick figures, like a waka, very faded. So I recorded that, and. You mostly miss it, you know.
Was this up at Whakamoenga Cave?
No, this is by Tokoroa, very close to Tokoroa itself. Well, then the person with the forestry, then he's in forests and birds and takes people, and he'll load the Maoris on the bus once a year, and they travel around to look for things that point out things on their own land that I've found, 100%, contributed nothing themselves, but they go on a bus trip and the paid feed and that the forestry has. And this before Hart brought out the forest and did the cut-ups and that of the blocks into anyway, this one of my students, he I think the first month he showed me this book about the Greeks, sort of trying to counter what I was saying, the Maori, Polynesian Maori and discovery and the unique things, and nothing pre this and that and DNA or anything else, and that with the environmental impacts, and so he had this book about the Greeks, and I looked through it. I borrowed it for a week, back in next class. I've got a copy myself now actually, and it's got. He took this group up to have a look at this tiny little thing, and then they've used it. Oh,
Don't tell Trevor Hoskins, but I found a bottle.
Well, this thing I got, this little waka thing, is part of the Greeks, and it's a Greek vessel, and it proves that the Greeks were here. Did they come to me? They have perspective. I have no idea that he took this group in a week or two later, just to say, oh, now is the latest flight. Perry comes as this group. And so immediately got into the Nutters Club contributors to this, and they've used this in their book on the Greek things. No acknowledgement. But as a finder and a recorder and that, if anyone knows that in the perspective, it would be me. But they bypassed, rush off to print.
Where the name Mine Bay why it has replaced Okuta Bay is the location identifier for those carvings. Why do they call it Mine Bay?
Well, it's just for the locals. It's just a local connotation, and then it just became.